Welcome, children. Today we are going to learn about parallel lines first, right? So, parallel lines means the lines which never meet. Now, if you have equation of the two lines, we can see I have one line as y is equal to 5x plus 5, and the another line is y is equal to 5x minus 5. And I can see it on the grid when I've drawn them, they seem to be parallel, right? So, what can you notice from the equation that is common in both the equations? So what we notice is we try find out the gradient. How do we find the gradient? We just compare it with y is equal to mx plus c, right? So the coefficient of x is your gradient here. So the gradient of this line is 5. Same way we'll find the gradient over here. The coefficient of x is the gradient. So the gradient here again is equal to 5. So what we notice here that both the gradients, they are equal, right? Both the gradients are equal. That means for any two lines to be parallel, their gradients m1 is equal to m2, right? So for the parallel lines, the gradients are equal, right? So let's just take a question and try finding out the gradient now. It says that find the gradient of the line which is parallel to the given line. Right? So that means I'll first find out the gradient of the given line. The first step is putting the line in the form y is equal to mx plus c. That means making y as the subject now. So how do we make y as the subject? Take 3x this side. It becomes 10 minus 3x. Your y becomes equal to 10 minus 3x upon 4. I can just separate out the denominators and write it minus 3 by 4x plus 10 by 4, or it becomes minus 3 by 4x plus 5 by 2. Right? So the gradient of the line is the coefficient with the x, and that in this case is minus 3 by 4. And now they are asking you to find the gradient of the parallel line, right? So the gradient of the parallel line is going to be equal to be same as the given line, and that means that is equal to minus 3 by 4, right? So any two lines, if they're parallel, the gradients are equal, right? The gradients are equal if the lines are parallel. Next we have is the perpendicular lines. Now we see I have two lines again, y is equal to 3x plus 1 and y is equal to minus x by 3 plus 4 by 3. Try finding out the gradients here as well. The gradient for this line we take at m1 is the coefficient of x, which is 3. The gradient here, m2, is the coefficient of x again, which in this case is minus 1 upon 3. So what do we observe here? When I find the product of the two gradients here, that is m1 into m2, I get 3 into minus 1 by 3, and I get that product to be minus 1. Yes. That means for the perpendicular lines, the gradient of the product of the gradients is equal to minus 1, right? So for perpendicular lines, the product of the gradients is minus 1. Or we can also say that the gradient of the perpendicular line is minus 1 upon m1. That is negative reciprocal of the given line. That means if I ask you to find the gradient of the perpendicular line, you're just going to reciprocal the gradient and change the sign, right? So let's just take an example. If I tell you that the gradient of a line is 3 by 4 and I ask you what is the gradient for perpendicular line, right? The sign is a perpendicular sign. So gradient for the perpendicular sign is just reciprocal it. So the reciprocal is 4 by 3, yes, and change the signs. So the gradient is minus 4 by 3. Same way, if I give you the gradient as 2 and ask what is the gradient for the perpendicular line, again reciprocal it becomes 1 by 2, change the sign, it becomes minus 1 by 2. So the gradient for the perpendicular line is minus 1 by 2. Let's take an example and try solving it. Find the gradient of the perpendicular line which is perpendicular to the given line. Now for the given line, again, making y as the subject, you will get y is equal to 21 minus 2x upon 5. Separating out the denominators, you get minus 2 by 5x plus 21 by 5. Right? So the gradient of the given line is minus 2 by 5. Now, gradient for the perpendicular line they want. So the gradient for perpendicular line will be just reciprocal it, so that becomes 5 by 2, and change the sign, so it was minus, it remains plus. So the gradient of the perpendicular line here is 5 upon 2. Right? Okay, the next topic is distance between the 2 points. Now if I give you 2 coins, let's say A, which has coordinates x1 and y1, and the second point B, which has coordinates x2 and y2, then the distance between both the points is given as square root x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. Right? So the distance between any 2 points is given as x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. Let's just try finding out the distance now. I've been given 2 points here. So we know the distance is x1 minus x2, that the difference between the x coordinates and squaring, and difference between the y coordinates and square. So the distance comes out in this case to be your x coordinates. Here it is 3, here it is 4. So you can write 3 minus 4 the whole square plus the y coordinates now 5 and 7. So 5 minus 7 whole square. Now what do we get? We get minus 1 square that, minus 2 square, which gives it square root of 1 and square of 4. So I get square root 5. So the distance between the points A and B is square root 5 units. Right? Okay, next, the last main topic here is the midpoint of line joining the 2 points. Again, if I take one point x1, y1 and another point x2, y. So if there's a line joining these 2 points, then the coordinates of M, which is the midpoint, right? The coordinates of M, which is the midpoint, will be just the mean of the x and coordinates and the mean of the y coordinates, which means x1 plus x2 upon 2, coordinate midway between the x1s, and y1 plus y2 upon 2, that is the coordinate midway between the 2 y coordinates. Right? So that is the midpoint of AB. Let's say I give you 2 points A and B and tell you to find the midpoint, right? So the midpoint in this case will be, take the x coordinate 2 plus 3, add them, divide by 2, and 5 plus 7 and divide by 2. So the coordinates of the midpoint comes as 5 upon 2 and 12 upon 2, so which is equal to 5 upon 2 and 6. Right? So these are the all concepts related to coordinate geometry. I have discussed few in part 1, and few in part 2. Next video is on a very important question, that is the question of finding the equation of perpendicular bisector. So from IGCSE point of view, it's an important question. So we'll be solving the question where we're going to find the equation of the perpendicular bisector in the coming video. Till then, bye-bye.